Hello. Let me just do a quick audio check and stuff here. Make sure that the levels are right. Looks like everything's okay. Um, it's awesome. I see. Hey, welcome, David B. Peter, 1978. Nice to see you in the chat. First time chatter. Yeah. So you started off with a pretty good question. And I mean, basically, I think there's a couple of different things. So David's question is that so the subject of today's stream is just kind of putting together a quick or hopefully quick program to extract data from Fortnite replay files. So typically, like on your PC or console, when you play a game of Fortnite, it records a replay file, which you can then go and use to kind of reconstruct the game in when you go into replays. And so typically, if you go into replays and you see the list of games, those are typically tied to files that are stored on your computer. I believe there's also streaming relays, which I think is outside the scope of this. Um, and so I'm going to basically kind of go through and try to write a quick program to extract data from that, such as like, what are the eliminations, or is the elimination a bot or a real player, that type of thing. And so David's question is like, what's the advantage of checking through Osirian, which is a service you can use, which basically where you upload your replay files and they provide this data to you. And that's a good question. I think the main thing really, so I am doing this primarily just to kind of understand, to try and get an understanding of the replay files and the data in there. I think some advantages might be one, you don't need to pay for the Osirian service. Um, so if you're somebody who is a little bit more technical, and doesn't mind being a little bit more hands-on, you could do this without having to pay for the service. The other thing is that there's other data in the files that Osirian doesn't provide you access to. And so I think that there's potentially more information in the file that you might want to look at some point in time. I'm going to do a quick battery swap on my headphones here. Um, and so, yeah, I think that that's probably like the main thing would be just to like one, get a better understanding of like what's in the files, and then also two, see if you can extract more data. I don't actually know the full extent of the data that's in there, and it's and so I probably will hopefully figure that out over time as I play with the files more. But my understanding, just by looking through some of the documentation of the library that I'm using to parse the file, I think there is probably considerably more information than what Osirian provides you with, and so that would be pretty useful. Hey, what's up, Wolverine died? How's it going? So I don't know if that answers your question, David. I mean, this could be for most people. Maybe this isn't useful, and in Osirian or Osirion or however you say it checks all the boxes. Um, but I think for me, this is kind of more just an experiment in learning, and then possibly over time. Yeah, always more fun to go out yourself. Wolverine died says, thanks for popping my stream yesterday. Absolutely, man. Yeah, totally. I'm always trying to, obviously, only so much time in the day, but I'm always trying to pop into other folks' streams, especially people doing Fortnite, and say hi and check it out and see how folks are doing. But yeah, no, it's always, like, I find this to be interesting. Another reason why I thought about doing this stream is that, so in the Fortnite over 40 subreddit, there's always people asking about programming or interested in programming. And one of the things that I have found over the course of my programming journey or career is that if you can find something that you are interested in, that may be tied to something in life outside of programming, then that's always for me a better motivator to learn something, versus just trying to go out and learn a particular skill or learn a particular programming language, have like something in mind that you want to do. And so in some ways that's also It's also kind of a motivating factor lots of times. It's just like, you play Fortnite, you like Fortnite, you'd like to, it's, something that you can relate to already. So you might be a little bit more motivated to go and learn how to code or code, the particular language or library if there's some underlying motivating factor. In this case, I am using, so this is the first time that I'm actually doing this type of stream. So um, if anything looks wonky or if there's anything I could change, let me know. I may not do it today, but I'll try to make it a useful experience. Um, David says, "Can you help me with something else? Santoki and I were discussing your name. She thought it referred to mods and rockers. I thought it referred to modding games. Which one of us is, if either, right?" Yeah, so I can totally help you with that. The story behind my name is that so I've got an 8-year-old son who really likes to play Minecraft. Um, and so we started playing Minecraft originally on the Switch split screen together, and then eventually switched to PC. And it's kind of interesting because that's actually in some ways how I ended up playing Fortnite as well, because I had been out of gaming for quite a long time, and so um, the whole like I was trying to find a game when he was much younger that we could play together. And the Switch, at that point in time, the Switch was kind of like the right level of lack of complexity for him to start gaming. So we played split screen Minecraft, and then eventually got into playing Java Edition Minecraft on PC. And he was always kind of asking about what we could do in Minecraft, and so I was always kind of like occasionally show him like new mod packs. For folks that aren't familiar with Minecraft, specifically for Minecraft Java Edition, there is a huge modding community around Minecraft because for a variety of reasons that I won't get into, Java Edition for Minecraft is very easy to mod. And the way the game is built or the way the program is structured, it's very easy to get in there and like change, like add new mobs or monsters, add new items, add new game mechanics, modify the game mechanics of existing ones. And so eventually kind of it was like a daily thing where my son was like, "Hey, can you like like you install this mod pack, can you find a mod pack that does this, I want a mod pack that does that, or like can you build me a mod pack?" And so eventually I did end up building a mod pack just like from scratch with like some very basic stuff, nothing super complicated. um, and but I was always kind of trying to get mod packs working for him. And some of the mod packs, there's some pretty crazy mod packs for Minecraft. Like they're ones that introduce like fighter jets and like tanks, and like not just like ones that are made out of blocks, but like ones that have like more realistic models. And like when you jump into the plane, you've got like a cockpit and all this stuff. And so there's some pretty crazy mod packs, but a lot of those only run on much older versions of Minecraft. Like there's some of them that only run in like version 1.7 dot something. And getting those running on a newer PC can often be a pain because they have a they require a particular version of Java or whatever, or the mod pack hasn't been updated in a long time and something subtle has changed. And so it often requires a lot of debugging. Um, and so anyways, that's the story. My son was always for asking me about mod packs. And so that was kind of how the name came about. Um, and so yes, you're right, is modding related, specifically Minecraft. Um, so I think I'll probably get started on the coding thing, or the kind of the project for today. Um, the so let's see here. David says, "I spent loads of time doing that when my son was into Minecraft." Cool. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I always enjoy kind of tinkering with stuff and getting stuff working. So I found it to be fun. I'd say the only kind of, it can be a little bit stressful when you have a child who is, like, sometimes these things take hours to figure out. Sometimes they take minutes. And so, they're like, "Are you ready yet? Is it done yet? What's taking so long?" And, like they're like hovering over your shoulder, kind of breathing down your neck, and you're like trying to kind of think deeply or debug something. It can be a little bit stressful. I'm going to snooze this ad break for now. But yeah, so I think to get started, Let's see if I can share the library. So I did a little bit of research into existing libraries that were available to parse Fortnite replay files, because ultimately the Fortnite replay file is an Unreal Engine, I think, network replay file, but it's different, or it has, like, I believe it's like customized in some way, so it's not just like a standard Unreal Engine replay file, at least based on my reading of documentation and various things. And so there were a few like replay libraries or replay reader libraries that were in other languages like Python and whatnot, but they're all pretty old. And these file formats, I think, change fairly frequently. And so the one that looked like it would be the most reliable and up to date is one called Fortnite Replay Decompressor, which is written in .NET, written in C Sharp, um, and which is part of Microsoft's .NET framework. And so that is the one I'm going to use because it seems like it's actively maintained. And I did do like a quick test of this ahead of time before going live, so I think it should work. And so this is the library I will be using. And so I had to go ahead, and I haven't done any C# programming in a long time, and I haven't honestly done very much of it. I have done some Java development in the past, and the languages are similar enough that I can kind of jump into it and fumble my way around. But the first thing that I'm going to need to do is actually get this library installed into my development environment. And so I'm using Microsoft Visual Studio, and this is just kind of like their default Hello World program. For folks that are not familiar with programming, often when you're learning a new thing, Hello World is the first program you write just to kind of get started, and it literally just prints Hello World on the screen. So the first thing I need to do is get Fortnite Replay Decompressor installed in this development environment. And so in .NET, and let me know if the fonts and whatnot are okay, if you can see them. And if you have any other questions or whatnot, I'll try to answer them as I go along. I don't know how this is actually going to go. This might be incredibly boring for some people and not worth watching, and it may be interesting for other people. So in .NET, there is a package manager, which allows you to install third-party libraries. And so I'm going to pull that up here and just install it real quick. And the command to do that is just, let's see here, .NET add package Fortnite replay reader. The font in here is actually pretty small too. I wonder if I can bump the font up in this. That is, let's see. I'm actually getting an error already. Look at that. Could not find any project in C. Kind of wondering if maybe I should just open the old, maybe what I'll do is I'll open the other project that I had for this. And since I've already kind of done this, instead of going through and coding it all from scratch, because that could actually be, more beneficial. Okay, so I've already gone ahead and installed this package in a development environment and kind of went through and tested this out. And so basically, I'm just going to walk through the code, and I realize that this may be kind of mind-numbing for folks. So if you're new to programming or if you have any questions at all, let me know. But basically what I'm doing is, the goal of this was just to create something that could take my Fortnite replay files, go through them, look at all the eliminations in the file, and then see if the person eliminated was a real player or a bot. And so to do that, I had to do this in .NET, and in typically one of the patterns in .NET is that you always kind of, you don't have to, but hey, what's up, Big X? Thanks for popping in. How are you, man? Thanks for the stream last night. That was really cool. I enjoyed checking it out. So not much, man. I'm just kind of writing some code here to parse Fortnite replay files. And so basically in any program in .NET, you're typically, at least based on my dated knowledge, you need to have what's called an entry point, which is basically like where the code will start running. And so that is typically the main method or main function in some sort of class that you can create. The class could be called kind of anything. And so here I'm just basically we're just gonna start by like printing a line to the screen saying that we're starting up so that we know the program's starting. We're going to create a logger, which is something that will allow us to capture log messages or status messages from the code that we're writing. And then I'm going to basically tell it where my replay files are. So in my computer, I've got a G drive, and I've copied a bunch of replay files into this directory called replay files. And so I'm just kind of taking that value and storing it in this variable called replaydir so I can access it later. And then I'm creating this new thing called reader. And so reader is a replay reader. And so replay reader is provided by this other software that I'm using called Fortnite Replay Reader. So they give me this thing called Replay Reader, and Replay Reader is basically just code that can read replay files. So I don't even need to like know anything about the Fortnite replay files to start parsing them, because this thing already knows how to do that for me. So that's basically like the main benefit of like using this open source software, is that they've already figured out how Fortnite replay files, how the data in there is structured. And so they have, they make it much easier for people to write software that does that. And in fact, I wouldn't be shocked. I don't know for a fact, but I wouldn't be shocked if like Osirian uses this library, because it seems like the only up-to-date open source library. So we're going to create a reader, and it's this thing that will be able to read Fortnite files. And then I'm going to write a message to the screen, basically just kind of saying that I'm looking for files in the replay directory, which is this directory up here. Where did I put it? There it is, G replay files. So I'm just kind of like printing, anytime you see console write line, that just means it's going to like print something to the screen. And so it's just going to be, it's going to run in a little kind of like, command window in Windows, and it's going to print something to the screen. And so it's going to let me know, hey, I'm starting up. And then it's going to do a bunch of stuff. And then it's going to say, okay, I'm looking for directories. I'm looking for files in this directory. And then we're going to go into our first loop, which is basically going to go through all of my replay files, because I don't just have like one replay file in there. I have a bunch. I have like 5, 10, or 20. And so I want to basically go through all of them and start reading the data out. And so in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just print another message and just say, okay, now I'm reading this file. So for each is a loop, which basically, given like a bunch of stuff like files in a directory, you're basically saying for each file in that directory, do everything below. So the first thing we're going to do is just print a message saying we've got, this is the file we're reading. And then we are going to read, we're going to see here, var. So the reader that we've created, we're going to tell it where that file is, where the Fortnite replay file is that we want to read. And then we're going to basically, it's going to give us back a replay, which is some other thing, right? But it's basically the game replay itself. So the reader is the thing that like goes and reads the file, and then it gives you a replay. And so the replay is the stuff with all of the data in it about the game. The eliminations, like what happened, kind of all that stuff. And the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm also going to create a player lookup. You can think of it as like a database, but basically in this case, it is a dictionary, is the .NET term for the name for the data structure that we'll be using. And so when I go through and I start reading this replay file to get, data about the eliminations of the game, it's going to give me back these IDs for players. And they're not, like when you kill a player in Fortnite or you get eliminated by someone and it says, like you got eliminated by like blah, blah, blah TTV or whatever, something, TikTok, or, Cafe Dave, or, one of the bot names or something. The replay file doesn't actually store, well, I should say it does store those names, but the elimination data doesn't have that name. It has the unique ID of that player. And so we're going to need to basically build up a table that like a, almost like kind of like a spreadsheet of the player ID and the player name to be able to see that. And so that's what I'm doing right here is creating this dictionary. And then we're just going to go through, and for each again means that we're gonna loop over a bunch of data, and that is the player data. So in the replay file, we've got a list of all of the player data, and that's basically going to be every player that you've seen during the game, because this is a replay file from your computer. So it only has data about players that were in your general area during the game. It doesn't have like every player in the game as far as I know. It could possibly have that because I guess you're on the bus and you're probably close to all the players at that point, but I'm not entirely sure about that. But we've got this stuff called player data and we want to go look through it. And then we want to basically, I'm going to skip over some of this in terms of like the getting the type and stuff, because it's probably not of interest to folks, but we effectively need to get the player ID for every player that we see in the game and their name. And then we're just going to store them side by side so that in the future, if I get a player ID of like, player 123, and I want to know if that's Cafe Dave or what's some other. I'm just thinking of Cafe Dave as the bot name because there is somebody in Fortnite over 40 named Cafe Dave, and so it's an easy one to remember. But there's other bot names, like something metal, heavy metal. I can't remember. But we're gonna want to look up the actual like the numerical ID and get the name from that, because when we look at someone who is eliminated, we're just going to have that numerical ID. So I'm just going to go ahead and right at the beginning, put all that data together so I can look it up quicker. And then when I do the lookup, when I make this little database of player IDs to names, I'm just going to go ahead and write it out for now, just so I can see it on the screen. I know that the program is working. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get the version of the what I'm calling the replay version, which is the version of the file. So like every time Fortnite or Epic, changes the replay file format, they're going to change the version number. And so it could be useful if you're like writing code to read these files to log the version number, because your code may be working one day and then like, a week from now it's not working anymore, or it fails in some weird place. And so you're going to want to see what the version, if the version's changed. Likely if it stops working suddenly, it's probably because something in the file data format has changed. And so that's typically going to be indicated by a version change. So I'm just going to print out the version. And then I'm also going to print out the game network protocol version, which is, and my understanding here is a bit naive, so I may get this wrong, but this replay version, I think, is the version of the replay file format. And I think that the network protocol version is basically the version of the game's network protocol, which is how it sends the data back and forth between the client, your game, and the server. And so this could potentially be useful as well. But basically all the data in the replay file is basically like the network. It's based off of the game network protocol. And all of this stuff I think is pretty, like, this is all pretty standard across Unreal Engine in general. That's not Fortnite specific. And so now we're finally at the point where I can like actually get into the elims. And so we're going to go, and I'm just going to print a message on the screen saying, elims, exclamation point. We're looking at elims. And then we're going to start going through again for each. We're just going to loop over all of the eliminations, and we're going to get some data about them. And so the data that we've got that I'm going to get is like for every elimination that happened in the game, there is this thing called elimination info. and or eliminated info. And so that is info about in a particular elim, like let's say you elim a player, then this is the info about that elim or about the eliminated. So it's the info about the person you eliminated. And then it has this thing on there called isBot. And so the replay file actually tells you straight up, was the player a bot or was it not? And that's why, it's pretty straightforward for like Osirian to tell you, like, yes, this player was a bot or no, because Fortnite actually tells you, like, it's part of the game data. And then we're going to get the name. Well, I might have to update this because it won't actually show you the name. It'll show you the ID. But we're going to get the ID of the player that was eliminated. And then the rest of this is just error handling, just in case something went wrong. Basically, like when I'm going through and like reading through this file and trying to get info about eliminations, it's quite possible I'm going to run into data that I did not expect, or the data could change. And so I don't want the program to crash. So this whole thing gets wrapped in what's called exception handling, or this try and catch. And so basically I'm saying, try to do this stuff. And then if an error happens, don't crash, just write a message to the screen with the error and then keep going. So that's where we're at. I don't know if anybody was actually stuck through all of that. If you did, I appreciate it, but I can totally get it if this was not the most exciting thing to walk through. But overall, that's the super basic code that we could start with and then kind of expand on later. And then I'm going to go ahead and run this thing and see if it works. So I'm running it. Hold on. Let me close that window and rerun because it had some old stuff in there. Okay, so we're going through and it's running. And as you can see, let's just start from the beginning and make sure that this thing is working. So it's starting the program and it's looking for replay files in here. It looks like an ad is going to start. So I'm going to probably, I'll probably talk through this a bit and then go through it again once the ad is over. Looks like Twitch is saying it's going to start in about 21 seconds. And let me see if I can go find. Okay, so we're reading file from this data. So this is a replay file that I had on my computer, and then I'm going through and I am building up the what do you have it here? The database of players, the player IDs and player names. And so these are not eliminations. These are just basically all of the players that were seen in the replay file. And so this player ID, let me make this bigger here. Let's see, can I make this? I don't know if you guys can read this or not. Let me look at OBS and see if that's readable. That might not be readable, huh? I wonder if I can maybe change the font in this. Control-Shift+, maybe. The other thing I could do is I can just kind of copy and paste this into Notepad. Maybe that would be the better thing to do. Let me copy and paste this into Notepad and I'll just blow it up so that you guys can see it. Okay, so let's do that. And then let's go ahead and get a new Notepad window going. Bear with me here for a second. Notepad. Okay. Let's do a new Notepad file and drag this puppy down here. So this is kind of the output of the file. Let me get the text. It should just be, there we go. Okay, make this a lot bigger. So basically, like, we've gone through and we've found limbs, and then we're checking this bot thing. Interestingly, these all say false, so I'm kind of suspect of this at the moment, so I might need to go back and do a little bit more debugging here, because unless there's just something about this game. Interesting. So, oh, you know what? I bet this is like a replay from, that's why. This is a replay from, funny enough, this is a replay uh, from a pit match. So it wasn't actually a game. It was just an FFA or a creative map. And so that is why I know this, because I think the other day when I was on Santoki's stream, we were in the pit with this person. And so as I'm at the beginning here, the beginning of the program, going through and I'm like building up this like list of like who are all the players in the game and what were their IDs and names. And so as you can see, player ID, there I am, player ID, Santoki player ID, and this person, and and so yeah, this was when I was watching Santoki stream the other night, and she jumped into the pit, and I went in there for a few. So that is why all of these, and if we look at all of these elims, we can see just by looking at the first part of the player ID who got eliminated, and then were they a bot? And so I was suspect as to why it was saying all these were bots. I have to look at this one. This one looks a little bit more random, so it may actually be a real game. But at least for now, I'm kind of thinking, I think I may have been in the pit for this one too. I think I might have been in the pit before that, in a public pit, and then now I'm in a private one. So I think that is why that is the case. I could go through and look at all of those things again, but before I do that, I want to get back to actually kind of updating this. And I'm going to wait. There's an ad break running, so maybe we'll kind of just 20 seconds until the ad break is over. I'll just send a message in chat. Should be ending soon. Got about 5 seconds left here, and I'll kind of recap this when folks come back. All right, so ad break should be over. I was just looking through the player data here. Let me go ahead and bring it back up on the screen. So I ran my program and started getting some data out of here. And so it was going through all of the eliminations in a match. And this was the replay file it was reading, and I was having it tell me um, one, who are all the players in the game. And so this was from a pit session with these players here. And so it was just mapping their player IDs to their names. And then it was going through and listing all of the elims. And when I first started looking at it, so this is basically telling me, like, is this person a bot, true or false? And then what is their name? I need to update this to actually be the player name and not the ID. So that's probably the thing I'm going to fix next. And I'll do that here in a second. And so it was just weird that like all of these people were not bots. And because I would expect to see some bot kills in a game, but it turned out that this was a replay file from the pit and not from an actual game. So let's go back and see if I can actually get the names in there. Give me just a second here. Again, very first time doing like a coding stream, so just kind of getting used to how all this stuff works. So we've got the replay files, we've got the elims out, and I want to get the player name into the elimination versus that kind of useless ID. And so this is where I currently do that, where I've got bot, and it's telling me true or false, is this person a bot? And then name eliminated. This is actually the same data. That was just something I'd put in there to, I can actually just probably take one of these out. And then it was showing me what I thought initially was the name, but it's just the ID. So we need to actually take this ID and convert it into a name. So to do that, I am going to create, and of course, autocomplete. I'm like, I have the Copilot AI thing enabled, and it can be kind of helpful, but it mostly just kind of spews stuff on the screen when I don't want it to. All right, so I'm going to create a new var, which will be the eliminated name, and that is going, or actually maybe what I'll do is I will create a new string called elim name. And it is actually offering a relatively good suggestion, but I'm just going to skip it for now. And so Weird. Why did my headphones just go out? Let me turn them back on. Maybe because there was no sound coming out. I think the headphones automatically shut off. There's no activity. All right, so I want to capture the name of the player that was eliminated. And so I've got this thing called player lookup, which is the dictionary that we created earlier. And you can go, that's right here. And so if you remember, we created this player lookup. Like I said, it's called the dictionary, which is a common data structure or like a hash map. But for all intents and purposes, if you're not familiar with that, you can think of it as kind of like a spreadsheet where basically it's got the player ID and the player name. And so I'm going to look up, but one of the useful things about storing it in that data structure is that I can actually go ahead and look for it. I got to remember how to, let's see, is there contains? I think it actually offered me, like I said, I don't typically write C#, so this is all a little bit new to me. Okay, so it has a function called contains key. And so the key is the ID that which we have. We know the unique identifier of the player. And so we want to check to see if it has that key. And I'm just going to auto complete this and see and read through it. And so that, so we're basically saying like, if our player lookup dictionary contains the player ID, then in player lookup, fetch the value that's at that ID, and that should be the name of the player based on how we stored it earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then instead of printing the ID in here, I am going to print the name. And so in that message we print on the screen, I'm just going to print elim name instead, which we've just looked up from our little kind of database that we built. And now in theory, if I run this again, we should hopefully see player names. Although, is this, oh yeah, it's right. Let me close this and reopen it to clear out the screen buffer. So let's run this again. All right, so we've got, as you can see now, I'm going through a game and I've got player names now instead of player IDs. Suspect, though, is that it's still saying bot false, so I think I might be doing something wrong there. And I mean, you need to go take a look at that because I haven't seen, let me go ahead and copy out all of this text. I'm going to rerun it and put it into Notepad so you guys can see it better. I'm sure there's a way to like set the terminal font. I just don't know. Let's see if I can figure it out here real quick. Export text, split tab, rename tab. Maybe I'll just export text. No, I'm just going to copy and paste it. Bear with me. So this thing's still running. I'm just going to see if I can like, I let it run through all the files. I know this is kind of boring because you can't see what's going on here, but there we go. All right, so let me go find something that looks like a real game, and I will copy and paste it so that it would actually be useful. Probably one thing I should probably add to this is printing out something about the map name, like what game mode it is. Like, I think it should be pretty easy to figure that out. Is it like in, you know, am I in Battle Royale? Am I in Reload? Am I in a creative map? So let me go ahead and copy and paste this, put it in Notepad so I can just pull up the text real quick here. Copy Notepad. Let's erase that and put it back in here. So this time I went through, and this is the replay file that I'm reading. And then this is the player ID. And these are the players in the game that that I can see in the replay file, like all the players I was able to enumerate out of that. And this is the player ID and then their name. Some of these look like obvious bot names. There's me right there in the game. And then, you know, some of these look like real player names. Defiant Gerbil, definitely a bot name. I've seen that like hundreds of times. And And then in this game, these are the limbs I had. And it's saying that they are, oh, let me go ahead and ban this person for spamming my chat. Sorry, Ray. Oh, speaking of AI, roll 27. Boom. So yeah, these were all, and then these are all of the limbs that I got in this game. I think that at least one of these was a bot. And so I got to check. Let's go take a look and see if I can. I might be doing something wrong with this. So let's take a look. Da-da. Okay, so where I go ahead and this is where I determine if someone is a bot is right here. And so I think this is a bool, right? So it's supposed to be a bool, so it should just return true or false. I wonder if there's like something wrong about the way that I'm okay, let's go look. I can actually go look at this and see. It might actually be, I wonder if it's because it's like a property or something. So right now I'm just digging into the source code for the library that I am using to try and figure out. Okay, so isbot is actually a function. And so it looks like I might need to get, okay. It's not, I thought it was going to be like a property, and it looks like it is a function. So let's go ahead and see if we can fix that. And going to see, there is a sub function there. So no, let me go. I'm actually not sure how I need to get that out. That is a good question, because this is, I may actually go back here and look at this again. Okay, is bot is the thing that we were looking at. And I want to see how I can, okay, so book string ID, player type, or no, it's not, is it? No, it's not a function. It is, they're just defining it. So it's a public property, bool is bot. I think this is just a property where it just basically, it should be, I think I'm actually using it correctly. Interesting. So the way that this works is that it says, okay, if player type not equals player types dot bot, return player type equals player types dot name bot, return true. Okay, so I am using it correctly. I just don't know why it's not, why it's telling me that nobody is a bot. So that is something that I'm going to have to dig into. I'm not sure off the top of my head why it's not working, but I could probably figure that out offline. But in general, this is like very, very simple. Like once I get that part figured out, then I'll basically kind of achieved the basic goal of this, which is just showing me the eliminated players and the and whether or not they're bots. And so I will go ahead and rather than kind of bore you with me debugging that, I will go ahead and do that offline and then update that. I've also got, so I have the code for this in a GitHub gist, which I can also drop into the chat. So let me do that real quick. And I think with that, I mean, that was probably, I'm actually going to be running off to PAX to Penny Arcade soon to check out the conference. And so I think with that, I will probably just wrap it up here in a minute, but I will drop the link to this code and actually let me update it with the most recent code and drop it in there. And so if anybody has any questions, feel free. I'll kind of stick around here for a couple of minutes. And yeah, if you have any questions, any thoughts, let me know. I don't know, David, if you're still around, if you have any questions, but if not, no big deal. I will go ahead and get this link dropped in here in just a second. Fortnite player data stream. Right, creating the gist, and then I will go ahead and make it public. I might just need to create a new one here. So we want to create a public gist, and then let's call it player data stream. And then I'll go ahead and drop it in here and then drop it in the chat. So GitHub just with code from this stream. Boom, there it is, if folks want to look at it or if you're interested in it. If you also have like any questions around how to get the development environment set up for this, then I will go ahead and I can do that as well. I mean, I'm basically right now just using Microsoft Visual Studio because for writing stuff in .NET, that is pretty much going to be one of the easier ones to get started on. There are other IDEs where you can do .NET development, but I just kind of going for like quickest time to having something working here. And then, yeah, I think that will probably be it for today while I run off to PAX. I hope everybody has a good weekend. And I'll hang out here for just a few minutes longer to see if there's any questions. But I'm guessing at this point that everybody's probably fallen asleep. All right, cool. Thanks, everybody. I will also drop a I'll leave a VOD for this and then drop a link in Discord or something. See ya.